abstract component for that?
There is one in the works by a South American guy at the university. The students I assume. And it's Indian.
And it's not the browser, right?
Yeah. So theoretically, we've got the whole environment because one day. Okay, so leading up to the next bit is the C# demo. This is probably a lot of these extra components that this was done by Michelle Benny's demo. Some features, things that you wouldn't expect you would normally be able to do in a web browser. The first of which is actually pointing out charts and graphs. So this uses SVG, which is in one form or another available in most browsers now. And he's got the examples of how you actually put that together in a small code output here. Which is very nice. So that was one thing we always
But isn't there an issue with SVG across browsers?
So it's all human with Seaside. You don't have to worry about the cross-browser. Yeah.
So you can read the type of the browser from the HTTP request and do different things for different browsers.
Okay, so you're not sticking SVG into the browsers right now?
No, if we go back to this plotKit example here, I don't want to label on each of these things too much, but here we make a plotKit data set, and then we make the very text that we want on there, which is our things around the sides.
Yeah.
And then we set that data set on a layout, which is a pie layout. We give it a radius, and we put the pie layout on a chart. And that's all we have to talk about as small talk database. The library, the plotKit library that was written for Seaside, then does the rest of that.
Where's the color chosen?
By default, the plotKit JavaScript library is like the string colors, but you can specify it yourself if you want.
Okay. So,
Sorry, just this one.
yeah. So, if I were using the old visual works for my GUI, why would I use that? All the assets that come up and that data and see, rather than just use something like that? Is that a...
Well, at the end of the day, you're in a web browser, and programming language you have to use to manipulate the UI in an advanced method, drawing pixels yourself, that kind of stuff, is JavaScript, not small script. But on the flip side, if you wanted to make a distributed application that did fancy stuff like this, I mean, I can play movies and do output blended rendering without any effort now. And it can even work on an iPhone. So there are significant advantages to actually building web apps instead of regular GUI apps. And if you were building a regular GUI app that was going to do what a web app did, then you would have to go in and basically build the network communications yourself. So you're in a web development environment, you're inherently distributed, you have to do it that way. So from the get-go, your program's going to be based around being self-client. When you build GUI apps, you actually have to be very talented and disciplined to do that work. At the end of the day, you can get a better program by doing your own open-door communications and your own GUI program. You can get a much better program. But you can build a program that works really well with this technology very quickly, and you don't have to get quite as specialized. At some point, you're probably going to want to learn JavaScript to build your own customized widgets on the client side. But either way, we're doing a fair bit without having to learn that. And that's the advantage of having all this stuff wrapped up for you is you can just go to the tab widget that on the pie chart.
But this mapping that you mentioned between Smalltalk and JavaScript, how low down can it go actually? So
pretty low. I mean, I wrote a library once called Simple Web, which basically was an XML tree on the server side, and it would send the XML tree to the client side, and then it would have a hash object, which was the same as the JavaScript object, and any message you sent to it would send to the client side. So I was basically writing Smalltalk code that emitted JavaScript and XML on the client side. It worked. And then from there, it would build up everything into a GUI environment, which I never did, because it was just proof of concept. But JavaScript objects are more like self-objects than they are like Smalltalk objects. They have no inherent defined shape. But that doesn't stop us in any way from doing that, because just because they have no shape doesn't mean they don't use the shape. When you have an XML HTTP request, it expects certain properties to be on it. So naturally, model those properties in Smalltalk. Yep.
Is JavaScript in any way inherently better than Smalltalk? Is it just that JavaScript All the browsers know the JavaScript.
All the browsers know JavaScript.
The others, they don't know small.
We don't have an option there.
Right.
Unless we use a different kind of smart client. And unfortunately, the best smart client around is available everywhere on phones, on computers, everywhere. There's a web browser.
So we use JavaScript because all the web browsers use JavaScript.
Right.
The universal web assembly language.
And we're kind of lucky that it's actually a dynamic language. If it weren't, then we would probably be kicking ourselves.
And now you get WPF coverage from Microsoft.
Yeah. That remains to be seen how well that actually ends up going. And
You refer to it as the web assembly language, which is becoming increasingly true. One of the things we're seeing at OOPSLA is people implementing other things like CLR on top of JavaScript.
There's a scheme interpreter. Scheme list interpreter done in JavaScript.
Yep.
Which, starts to really sound like IP over carrier vision.
The layers
The inefficiency there are incredible.
just a question of interaction between
We know our own browser in small stuff. Would we actually gain anything? I mean, you get back to the limited portability. You got rid of JavaScript by creating our own browser and small stuff. Would we gain anything at all?
You would have to, you'd have to buy into the mythology that it's a better language.
Yeah,
We all do, right? And that we could actually do a better job than what's being done, which we all believe. But the fact is that it didn't happen.
The other thing is small talk's always been able to sort of lead very quickly by adapting to whatever everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have to live with
Taking advantage
working
of
with
the
JavaScript. There's really no choice.
Well, I think the way things are going now, pretty soon you're
Trying to
going to see a desktop inside the browser. You're going to see the start bar and bottom.
I understand that.
No, he's not joking. People are doing that.
I understand that we're stuck with JavaScript. Just trying to get a feeling of what we're losing by being stuck with that. Maybe nothing at all.
Yeah, but it looked, from what I saw, from what I'm getting at it, and I saw the work that Dan Gals is doing at OOPSLA.
With the live kernel.
Yeah, the slightly kernel thing. It is basically we're doing the morphic stuff that is in Squeak, but right into JavaScript right now, right? So I mean, it looks like it's the impedance mismatch between a dynamic language like Smalltalk and JavaScript is pretty good, actually.
Yeah. The thing about JavaScript in a web browser is you track. 100% absolutely track. If you want to do scalable graphics, your browser has to know scalable graphics. Otherwise, you do it in the most inefficient way possible, so like this will be very slow. In language like Smalltalk, you know tracks. You can really do anything you want. And that's one of the lovely things about Smalltalk, is you can really do anything you want. There is actually permission model in JavaScript for properties. So if you go and attempt to modify certain properties on a window object, you get errors. So you don't have access to that. It's a real sandbox, more so than the JVM level was.
There is a downside.
The downside.
It's always been, like HTML's always been a reporting tool, basically. Just dump stuff out, whatever.
So,
What's the other thing also we realize is that these libraries, it's a lot of JavaScript too. Oh, there's a lot of bugs in there.
There's like one meg deploy your application.
And you run into a bug, you need to fix the bug. Right? It's still the book. You are dealing with language
and it's a language that doesn't actually really have a bug.
yeah, and that's kind of the gist.
That's one of the reasons why we use the Firefox.
The trade-offs being building it in this.
Firefox
The grip time,
console.
So what's actually just taking is that all these libraries that run their own object model on top of the prototypes.
Yes.
So now, can you, for example, combine new tools with Spectaculars? Not just having both on the same page. I mean, just reusing objects.
Oh, yeah, you can do that. I mean, theoretically, one of the things that, we'll get to your question in just a second, you've been struggling to get it out there, is that you can extend objects in JavaScript in peculiar ways that are all completely compatible. And every base JavaScript framework for modern JavaScript, Utils, Prototype, Spectaculars, jQuery, they all do it differently and they're all compatible. However, Utils 1.2 Beta 1, which just came out, doesn't modify objects.